Welcome to the True North Podcast. What a different centering makes.
Yes.
Welcome to the True North Podcast, where two practicing light workers get together every week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can live as your true self and follow your true north. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Abby.
You certainly are.
And I'm Abby. Crickets.
You're being. Well, I'm so chill right now. Like, I'm just, like, my energy is very, like, down here.
Mm-hmm. Is that because you grounded before we jumped on?
A little bit.
Or are you just there today?
I am. I've been there all day. Like I've been. It's kind of like I've been in that state of flow for most of the day.
Nice.
Where the only thing that exists is now, and the only thing that I'm dealing with is like what's on my plate, and I haven't had to try to be focused. I've just been focused. I've even been able to multitask a few times, which is really not in my wheelhouse, and just on top of my shit, you know?
Yeah. Nice. It's a good place to be. Flow.
Yeah, so it's like a relaxed, but not busy, but like a movement, like a, I don't know what the word is for it. Anyway, I'm here.
Nice. You're here.
A lot going on.
Okay.
Where are you?
Oh, I'm in a place of needing to speak my truth.
To me?
Yeah.
Or to everyone?
You.
Okay.
I figured let's just hash it out on the
Okay.
show.
I have an inkling of an idea of what you're going to speak.
What is it? What do you think?
Okay,
Where am I
well,
going?
talk about an ongoing conversation.
Yes.
So we had a conversation in our tribe, which led to a recording of a podcast, which led to another conversation in our tribe, which has led to us recording a podcast. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I have some ownage to do.
Interesting. In what way?
I went back and I listened to all of it, like back to back, one big long conversation. And in our tribe call 2 nights ago, I spoke to something, and I said a few times, like, I'm not saying this is what anybody said, but this is what I was hearing, right? And then at one point you were like, did anybody actually say the thing that you're responding to? Because I got really worked up, and everyone was like, whoa, where is this coming from? And so I went back and listened, and I was like, what actually was I responding to? Mm-hmm. And I found some really
I was
interesting
confused.
little insights. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you were. And I kind of felt silly listening this morning to last week's episode because I felt that there was, well, basically I felt like we were saying one thing in the podcast, and I felt the need to like steer it another direction and make sure that we also said this other thing, which is what I took to our tribe call. But then in the first like 11 minutes of last week, you said the other thing that I was trying to drive home. Like, you said it. You like, because my whole thing was like, we were talking about speaking your truth and whether or not you're going to let other people's reactions to your truth govern how you speak your truth, right? And I even wrote this down so that I wouldn't get it wrong. But you said in the first, like at the 10-minute mark, you're talking about like, hey, before we talk about speaking our truth, here's a fucking disclaimer. A prerequisite to speaking your truth is that you're already like, you're solid on your essential self, your highest self. You're operating in love and light and all the things that go along with that. Like, that's the container within which speaking your truth is like the best place to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So I just went this other direction, like I just missed it. I missed when you said that, because you even said like, where is it? You're expressing your essential selves in the things that you speak, and the intention should be that when you speak your truth and you're using your voice, the intention should be love and light. When you do use your voice, it isn't about entitlement or I'm better than you kind of attitude. It's not judgment on somebody else. It literally is speaking your words from a place deep within you that aligns with love and light. You said love and light 3 times. Then, however they take that is on them. But your intention is love and light 4 times, and it's true to who you are. Mm-hmm. Right? So the next thing I said was, that makes a lot of sense. And then I took it somewhere else. And later on in the podcast, you said other words. And then I said, that makes a lot of sense. And then I said something else. And I thought, Ryan, that is your way of saying, I was not listening to what you were saying. Like that, I I know myself well enough to know what I was doing in my brain while you were saying those things. And then the irony is that right in the middle of the episode, I was talking about habits I formed to make sure I am presently listening to somebody.
Yes.
And that is sandwiched between two instances of me not hearing what you're saying and then coming back with a tell. It's like you with like when I say something and you say correct, that flags to me that like, oh,
right.
maybe you disagree and you're not gonna speak your truth. Well, if you're talking and I ever say that makes a lot of sense, ask me if I even heard what you said, because I probably didn't. And I don't think anybody else on God's green earth would have heard that episode and picked up on that.
Okay.
But you giving the disclaimer that you don't just go around speaking what you think and pushing the consequences on other people all the time, which is what I was afraid people were going to take out of that episode. Before we even talked about it, you're like, hold up. And then you said the thing. So then, I go into our tribe call, and I'm all like, what about being considerate of other people? And it was all really good points. Like, I think I was in the right spot. I was just responding to something that nobody really said. Like, a fear that somebody may do with the last episode. What I did with the last episode, and I was part of it, is like we had a whole conversation about this, and I missed the part where you communicated that speaking your truth and putting it in the other person's realm of responsibility, how they take it, is predicated upon having their highest interest at heart when you do, and speaking to them in love.
Yes, right.
And if you're not speaking to them in love, if you are in ego, if you are sitting in judgment, if you are in self-defense, if you are just, any of the reasons why people like to just speak their truth, if you're in any of the ego-driven stuff, or you have like a fighter mentality, or you're just critiquing someone because something they did is inconvenient for you and you don't like it, whatever, right? If that's where you are, then check yourself, because you're not going to be speaking. And here's the thing, that the switch that happened for me when I went back and reviewed all this stuff is that even though you're talking and using your voice, you're not speaking your truth, because your truth is something that comes from your essential self, which is your highest self, which is something that is aligned with love and light.
Compassion,
so in that moment,
kindness.
You're speaking your opinion, you're speaking your mind, you're speaking your thoughts, you're speaking whatever, but you're not speaking your truth.
Right.
And that was the thing that really flipped for me. Like, what if people hear this and then they just like go around saying, well, I don't care what anybody does with what I say, because I'm just going to say it, and then that's on them how they react. But no, that's not what you were ever saying at any point in time. I just heard that.
That's why on Tuesday at our tribe call, I was incredibly confused, because I thought that we had established that. I thought the whole episode was about that speaking your truth is showing up unapologetically.
Right.
Like, just as
built
yourself.
Upon a platform of love.
Yes, but
that was the thing I wasn't hearing you saying in the last episode. Walked away from that episode really bothered by the fact I didn't think we got that across. Went into our tribe call defending.
Okay. Well, then that makes a lot more sense.
So now, like, there are plenty of times, really good reasons not to say something. And those are if you're in being judgmental, if you're in defense of yourself, if you're in your ego mind, if you're
that's
whatever.
That's not your truth.
Right. You're not speaking your truth, even if you do speak your mind in those situations.
Yes, correct.
So what I was confusing was, I thought we were talking about just talking. And the word truth in the phrase "speak your truth" is that's loaded with a bunch of stuff that it was just like, whew, like I was just, I was being the audience member that I was afraid would hear this and hear what I was hearing. I didn't say that sentence right. But anyway, I'm glad that like now
we have come full
we're
circle.
able to like say, just in case somebody else missed the same thing I missed, it's yes.
Yes, but this leads me to the point why I actually wanted to start this conversation. Like, I'm glad we cleared the air about Tuesday night. That really was part of it, because I was so confused. I'm like, I swear that's what we said, but
that's what you said.
So there's a couple of times you've said that we should take responsibility for what we say on this show, and every time you say it, it pisses me the fuck off.
Tell me more.
So here's what happens. So I think what you're saying, like when I really try to, okay, I'm mad, Abby, why are you mad? I go through my whole process of like, okay, you're triggered, red flag, pay attention to this. Why does it bother you so much when he says that we need to take responsibility for what we say? And I think it's because what happens is when you say that, I hear it as what I have to say is not good enough. What I have to say is not of value, that it might be something that I need to be sorry for. And that is my conditioning. So I wanted to kind of clear the air because there's another thing that happened. So in our last episode, I shared a story about somebody very close to me, and it triggered someone else in my life enough to say something to me. And it was one of those times where I actually got some feedback and it was negative, and it really hurt my feelings because I interpreted it as them telling me that what I said was really hurtful against the person I love. And that is not how it came out. And so that was not my intention. And so I got really upset about that, almost to the point where I was like, shut it down, take it off, delete it. We're just going to redo this episode and I'm not going to include that part. And so then after that event, you again said, I think we need to take responsibility. And I immediately went into this mode of like, you're right. I've totally made my loved one feel really hurt. What I did was horrible. That leads into this negative self-talk of like, I'm just so inconsiderate. I can't believe I didn't even think about, like, I'd go down this rabbit hole of negative self-talk. And so as I'm sitting with this and I'm trying to process through all of it and then put it together through the lens of speaking my truth, I want to be able to show up in this space with you, with our audience, completely as myself. And I work hard on living in love and light and staying in love and light, and especially in this space. And so I feel like I already do take responsibility for what we say, because what I say, I don't take lightly. It takes a lot for me to even just, like, you can hear it in my voice. I don't even want to be saying this right now. I feel like I'm going to get pushback. And so it takes a lot for me to already show up in this space and already feel like our whole goal and our whole intention for starting this podcast was to use our voice, but it was to use our voice in love and light, because those are the topics that we got so passionate about. Those are the things that we could just spin on for hours when we would have coffee, and then it would go home and it would transform us in some way. And so I never come to this thinking I need to take responsibility for what I say, because I feel like when you're already in that place, and this is where I feel like you said that you kind of circled back to, is when you're already in that place, it just naturally happens. You know, I'm not going back and forth while I'm in this show between ego and love and light, or at least I'm being very mindful of trying not to. I get that ego sort of runs the show sometimes, especially Figment, my lizard. But my main intention for this show and for showing up in my life is to be in love and light. And so I cannot be responsible, knowing that that's my intention, for how someone is going to take that information. I want to put it out there and be very clear with how we communicate, which is why I threw that disclaimer out there in the first place. I'm glad you finally listened. but that, you know, so I want to be clear in what we communicate, but I also can't worry about the person that says, well, Abby and Ryan say I don't have to give a shit about what you think, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. I can't worry about that person, because that is not how I'm showing up. And so I wanted to just put that out there and say too that, like, this this is not really how we normally operate, right? This is not standard operating procedure to live in love and light, to show up and meet people exactly where they are. That's why it's a practice. And that's why we come back and we keep having these conversations about ways we've struggled, places that we've got caught up. And so other than to say, I think we need to all take a lesson from our kids, right? They show up this way all the time.
Yeah.
Completely as themselves because we taint them in some way. But so I just want to throw that out there. I want to be very clear on what I feel, which is not your responsibility to own, but when you say that, that's how I feel. And I also want to say, if I push back and say I don't want to take responsibility, that you understand what I mean when I say that.
Yes. Well, that was the one place that I think your words led me just now was to unpack what we mean when we talk about taking responsibility. When I say take responsibility for our words, do you hear me saying take responsibility for what our audience does with our words?
Yes, I do. And typically it's because the conversation we either have on record or even off the show, occasionally it leads back to something someone came back and said to you. Not all the time, and I'm not placing blame on that, but it's, so then I do interpret it as, okay, I'm hearing you say that you're taking ownership for how someone's using this information.
I think, if I'm honest, I tend to do that. Whether it's right or wrong, if I hear that we said something on our podcast or that I said something on our podcast that somebody took a direction that I didn't intend for it to go, in my heart of hearts, I would have to admit that I do take responsibility for that. The first place I go is I should have said it differently to keep people from taking it the wrong way. And so that's a growth opportunity for me because I don't think that's the right place to go, you know? That's not helpful or productive. I do think there's a difference between taking responsibility for our content and taking responsibility for what people do with our content.
Okay.
And I'll draw from another example that's, I can't believe I'm going to draw this comparison, but it's relevant. When the people who stormed the Capitol, a lot of fingers pointed back to Trump for inciting that. Because he said a whole bunch of tweets about we have to be strong and show our strength and we have to fight and we have to show up and we have to reclaim the democracy, all that stuff, right? And so while the people who are on site doing the rioting are responsible for their own actions, it can also be said that Trump is responsible for the fact that the thing happened at all because he told them to do it. And it could be argued that if he hadn't said those things, it probably wouldn't have gone down that way. And so in this scenario, I'm very, very much a fan of him taking responsibility for his words and the consequences of his words while still being separate from that being a separate thing than the people who actually heard his words and did the thing that they did with his words. It's a really tricky thing to tease out, but I do think that there's a line there. So if we say something that causes somebody to harm somebody else, we're not responsible for the harm directly, but we are complicit. And I think just being mindful of that as we produce content is a wise way to go about it. Understanding that while we're not controlling people, we are influencing people. And that's, I mean, because one of the core foundational precepts in a lot of the mysticism that we engage with is that we're all one, right? And so if that's the case, then everybody's business is our business. You know, the whole your business, my business, God's business, it draws barriers that disappear when you're in flow, that disappear when you're in love. That the closer you get to the divine, the more imaginary those barriers seem.
So then I have to argue, if our foundation is love and light, what would we say that would make us complicit to someone hurting someone else?
Well, that's the rub. I'm not always in love and light. That's the thing. Is like in a perfect world, and this is something I heard you say that you work very hard to do, is that when you show up, you take the mic, you talk for an hour, knowing it's going to get put out into the world. You do the work to make sure that you're in love and light. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a coverall. That's kind of like if this box is checked, then that automatically by default checks the other boxes. So I don't have to worry about a word, because I've already worried about all the words, because I've worried about the self that's producing all the words, right? And so I'm hearing that from you. I've heard it before, but at the same time, it feels like the first time, because I think I'm in a different heart space this time, having heard you say that. But personally, I think it's very seldom that I show up for this podcast in like full swing soul mind. Like there's always ego in there. There's always some kind of a fear, some kind of a, muckiness. And so maybe that's why I'm pushing so hard for be mindful of your words. Because personally for me, I need to have that conscious intention in place. Because if I don't, then the muck gets out. And then it's plausible that I could say something that someone could misinterpret into being less than their best. I had a conversation with some friends where we were talking about, like, they wanted to do this exercise where they come up with 3 words that they would use to describe me. And I told them, well, you can do that, but you're really describing yourself. Like, you're giving me information about how you experience me, which is more information about how you experience the world and what you focus on than it says anything about me, right? Mm-hmm. And so we kind of went back and forth a little bit. And then sure enough, when I took the 3 words that they both used to describe me, I was like, oh yeah, this is 100% a self-portrait from you. I know so much more about where you are from the way that you describe me than anything having to do with me. And I say that because if I had listened to your words on the topic of using your voice, it is a picture of where you are. And if I look at my words on using your voice, it's a picture of where I am. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense for you to jump straight to what they do with it is their business. Because the it you're talking about is, by definition, love and light truth words that you've put out. Because if you weren't in that space, you wouldn't put out words. Mm-hmm. And when I talk about being mindful of the consequences of my words, I'm not yet in the habit of putting myself in that place before opening my mouth.
I'm thinking. Not the place to be thinking, but I'm thinking. As dead space is uncomfortable.
No, I'm not gonna edit out this. Well, I mean, another thing to point out is that in the last episode, you talked to me about how you consider me a safe person because if you say something that I disagree with, I will come at it with curiosity and questions, and I won't push back or shut down or kind of like attack what you said, right? Mm-hmm. And then on our tribe call,
Tuesday,
yeah. 2 days ago,
I know,
I again was the antithesis to that, and I was like, I mean, again, I stand by the points I made, but the thing that I'm calling into question now is, did I really even need to make those points? Because I feel like everybody else just kind of understood that to be the case. And I was over here hearing something other than what you were saying and responding to the other thing that was painted the color of my own ego. And then I threw that out. And then the conversation that happened. We're like, people are not going to want to sign up for this anymore. Then we're like, I can become a patron. We had a new patron.
I know. Patron. That's a crazy thing.
They just signed up. This is their first call, and then
forgot we're arguing.
We argue for an hour and then say, okay, love you, bye, see you next week. Like it was. It's very real, very raw. And so I really struggled with like, oh, did I just put a dent in Abby's perception of me that I'm a safe person to say stuff to? Because even when you were talking to me earlier in this one, you mentioned that you were hesitant to say those things because you were afraid you're going to get pushback.
Okay, let me be clear. I was not hesitant that I'm going to get pushback from you. I am consciously aware that I might be getting pushback from the very person that feel I offended them in the first place. And here's the thing: is you still are a safe person for me, and this is such a great example of what we're trying to say. That not every conversation is going to go a certain way. Not every conversation is going to have this resolution where everything is kind of perfectly tied up in a bow. And that's what Tuesday night was for us. But I have enough evidence that you are still a safe person. And I also have the tools to go back to that conversation and say, I do not understand what Ryan was trying to say. And really all it led me to do is I need to ask more questions. Right? That's, I'm trying to figure out what he's saying. What am I missing? Because I just didn't see that we were just not on the same page. But so you've given me enough evidence, regardless of if we have a rocky go at it every now and again, that you're still a safe person for me to show up today and say what I'm saying to you now. And I think that's the important thing to remember. Something else I want to pull out about what you said is when you find yourself casting judgment on somebody else, or you're worrying, or you're kind of sitting in their business. You were talking about your friends using these words to describe you, and really all it is just a way to describe themselves. You know, when you worry about how someone's going to interpret something and it's not in love and light, you said it yourself. It's like that must be then the very thing that you struggle with. There's something in that you're giving me a whole lot of information about yourself.
Me, not some imaginary audience person. Yeah.
Right. And so anytime you find yourself, not you personally, just the audience, like find yourself judging somebody, the first place to look is in the mirror, right? What are you saying about yourself that you're frustrated with, that you're struggling with? And, but anyway, I didn't want that to go by unnoticed, because that's what I heard you say, is that, okay, I can meet you where you are. I now know where you are. I've asked enough questions. You've said enough words that I get a feel for what that means for you. And I need to not make assumptions.
I just feel like I just took off a weighted vest. Like hearing you say that makes me feel lighter. Because what I heard you saying was that you see me and I just showed you a lot of muck and there was no judgment in anything that you just said, you know? And the interesting thing is, like, I pulled back up because I actually wrote notes. I very rarely write notes on these calls, but I very clearly needed to work this out. Enough to hijack a call that people were paying to be a part of, to listen to me figure out how to hash out things that they were all like, yeah, you this is what we were all here already. But because I wrote down just a little diagram of like when to care about what they do with your words and when to not, right? But now look at these, and these are all a reflection of me, which it makes it even more obvious why I would say you should give a shit about what people do. Because when to not care. When I'm in love and light. When to not care
what other people...
when to say your truth without worrying about what they're going to do with it.
Got it. When
you're in love and light.
Yes.
Because again, by definition, if they take that into a place that's not love and light, that is on them, because all you're giving them is love and light. So for it to end up going through them and end up not that, they're the place that transitioned. Right? If I'm feeding them things that are not love and light, and then they spew out not love and light, well, then it could... Right.
Yeah.
So when to not care what they do. When you're in love and light, which I'm not a lot of the time, most of the time, when I wouldn't otherwise speak up, which I always speak up, when I'm prone to value your words over my words, I also I very rarely value someone else's words over mine. I'm just, I'm working on that, but that's just naming where I am.
Okay.
So all the conditions for when not to care are conditions that I don't meet. But then here's when to care. When to care about how your words affect other people. When I'm an ego, that's me most of the time. When I'm prone to value my words over yours, also me most of the time. And so I exist in the space that in this little diagram says, care how your words affect people. I'm not in the space that says, okay, now that you're in the space, you don't have to. Like that's not a description of me.
Do you have evidence that you've ever been that way?
Oh, I am that way in spirit. Here, and you said it earlier. It's a practice.
Yes.
And so when I practice my tools that put me in that space, I am that way. And when I don't practice the tools, I'm not. And I don't practice my tools enough to keep me there more often than I am not there.
You don't exercise enough.
I don't exercise enough. And so that's kind of just where I live for the time being. There's also something on here. No, that's for something else. So,
but I want to challenge. You said you were talking about the place when you don't need to care about somebody else is when you're in love and light and all those things you listed, and then you said I don't meet those. Well, I guess I do sometimes, but it's not my MO. It's not my norm. Right.
And again,
but I want to point that out, because what you're doing is where you're saying I don't meet those. I never show up that way. You are making a connection that you are not capable or that you don't do those things. When even I have evidence where you've done it with me. So you are capable. It just may be that that's a 10% versus 90%, but you have, can you hear that? Dang it.
Yes, it's fine. This episode is already raw enough. People aren't going to be upset about a dog barking.
Amazon delivery. So
that's fair.
You can let that go and come back and process, but you did, and yes. It's not, and
it's not absolute.
That's like your first, to point that out for anybody that's also working on this, like your first thing to kind of start to be aware of is that is not always true. To right. Actually write down to find the evidence where it is true that you do know how to operate that way.
Yeah.
It just may not be all the time.
It also needs to be said that when we're talking about how there are quote unquote times to not care how your words affect somebody, that is that's because your words are couched in a bubble of caring.
Yeah, right. Let's define that. Yes.
So yeah, you have already coded yourself in giving shits. You've already coded yourself in caring about them, their well-being, their emotional health, their highest good. You're already in compassion. You're already in love. You're already in, all those things are already in place. So if those things are in place, then when you speak your truth, if you know that they're going to be triggered or hurt by it or whatever, you don't necessarily have to coat those individual words intentionally in compassion, empathy, love, because you're already in a place where literally everything you do is already coded in compassion, empathy, love. And during the call Tuesday, one of our patrons told me a story of a time that they had thought they'd done something not wrong, but just like that they could have done better. And they came to me and said, could I have done better? I triggered this person. And I spoke truth to that patron. And it may have been a hard truth. And I wasn't even conscious of how of whether or not that would trigger them. Well, I was, but I wasn't thinking, is this sentence going to trigger them? Okay, I can say it. Is this word going to trigger them? Okay, I can say it. I wasn't doing checking with every single one because in that relationship, in that friendship, in that conversation, I was 100% completely operating in that love, light, compassion stuff. Right? And so that's an example of me being able to say a word without necessarily meticulously considering that sentence because I had already grounded myself in all of the checks and balances I would have run that sentence through anyway.
Right, because that's what we're saying. When you are speaking your truth, you don't have to care about what somebody else thinks, because that doesn't even exist, because you are already caring. Like, that's the difference in like worry and empathy. When you're speaking your ego, then there is worry. You're sitting in their business that, okay, you've triggered them, you've said something mean, you've said something, whatever. But when you are speaking your truth, that's when it is empathy, where the same triggering may happen, but you are meeting them where they are. You are loving them. You are figuring out why that's happening. It's not about you in that moment, right? It's about them and having that empathy for them, regardless of what your truth is. Because if it's truth, then it is aligned with compassion.
Oh,
what was that?
Your words are, it's like a fish tank. Hang with me here. You are the water and your words are the fish. Okay?
You are the water.
Your words are the fish. Okay. If the water is shitty, the fish will all get sick. Okay? And in shitty water, I don't mean literal shit because I don't really know that much about fish tank, but just like whatever conditions the water would have to be in for fish.
Low oxygenated.
Right. You could, low oxygenation. I have a friend who knows so much about fish tanks that the more he knows, the less I feel like I have to know because I can just ask him instead. So it's like I'm out. Anyway, okay. So in mucky water, and if you still want the fish to be healthy, you could go fish to fish to fish to fish and address their own individual health and give them like little supplements or fish food or whatever a fish needs to stay healthy in the mucky water. You can do that to all of your fish and keep them healthy, and it's a lot of work, and if you miss one, then that one gets mucky, right?
Yep.
Or
I like where you're going with this.
You can just fix the water. And if you fix the water, you don't have to monitor whether or not the fish are constantly staying healthy, because you know that you've created conditions for all of them to be their best. That is what we're saying. Like having to individually pay attention to everything you say to make sure that it is the best version of the thing is like treating sick fish in dirty water.
Yes.
And so when you condition the water yourself, when you put yourself in that place of love and compassion and empathy and caring, then there's no need to tend to the health of every single word you say, because you know the water that's swimming in and you know that it's already going to come out the best it is.
Absolutely.
So, and then in that space, that's when we're talking about be assertive. That's when we're talking about speak your voice. That's when you're talking about it's not on you if they take it the wrong way, the wrong place.
Yes, right.
And if your water is mucky and you're going to use words, then while you're fixing the water, it still behooves you to address the fish, because you don't have that environment in which you can just assume that they're going to come out the best automatically. And I'm saying that everything I brought to the last 2 calls and the last 2 episodes is I've been mucky water man. And I'm saying I need to tend to my fish. Why are you telling me I don't need to tend to my fish? I need to take responsibility for every single one of these fucking fish, because if I don't, one of them's gonna poison the rest of the water. Like,
no,
you know?
No, just clean up your water. But let me tell you this, as a fellow fishbowl mate, you are not defined by your muckiness. I don't see you as your muckiness. You may have muckiness. I have muckiness. We all have muckiness. But you said something earlier about that I was able to still just show up even with you being mucky.
Or at
and
least
I just want to point out,
me as I am, yeah.
Because I am just taking you as you are. Your muckiness doesn't define really who you are, the person that I see. Muckiness is conditioning. The muckiness is trauma. The muckiness is a whole lot of shit that's not really ours in the first place, that we just kind of carry around. So bring on your muckiness. We'll just move it out of the way. We'll just clean it up.
I've never argued that I'm anything if not a mess. But
no,
here
you're
we
definitely
are.
not a mess. Definitely not a
I
mess.
posted a thing on Facebook earlier today. I don't do like enamel pins. It's not apparently people collect them and it's a whole subculture. But I was served an ad for whatever reason for these enamel pins, and one of them was one of those Windows dialogues with like the message and the OK button, and the message on the window said, what did it say? The task has successfully failed. And I was like, if anybody ever needed a picture of the alerts that are going off in my brain all the time, anytime I attempt anything, it's like I have successfully fucked that up. It's just that's the
fail
lens
is just
through which I
your
see myself.
first attempt in learning. So that's all it is. It's practice. Your muckiness is practice. That's what it is. An opportunity to grow.
And when you find people who are a safe place for you to do that, you hold on to them and cherish them and don't ever let them go.
Well, they are your tribe.
Yes. Oh my
I'll
God.
love you and hold you and squeeze you.
Let's pretend I didn't just giggle like a little girl.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez
So
Louise.
but apparently, I'm really glad that we're continuing this conversation because I have gotten more feedback about this particular episode. And I think it literally is because, and I struggle with it myself, we all have a hard time speaking our truth. And I think what we're trying, or what we're finally sort of sorting out here for everybody, is that know what you're talking about. Are you talking about speaking your ego or speaking your truth?
Yes.
And we're starting to filter through those two, because I think sometimes when we sit in fear of what the other person, how they're going to react, is we are sitting maybe in speaking our ego instead of in speaking our truth.
Well, I mean, there's even a possibility that you speak love and light into somebody and then they turn it into muck and then they get that muck all over you. And so there is like something to be said for being cognizant of the high potentiality that could be a result of you speaking your truth. Not that it should be a deterrent necessarily, but again, it's just a matter of awareness. I could be in total love and light with somebody, and if I have there's a high probability that what I say is going to get me punched in the face, I'm probably just not going to say it anyway. And that's okay. It's just like the bigger thing is, it's not should I or shouldn't I, it's be aware of these elements, be aware of the mechanisms that are at play here, be aware of where you are. And you started, what was it, True North Tip Tuesdays, the Instagram thing? I was pleasantly surprised. I love that. But you said like, know your true north.
Know your truth.
Know your truth. You cannot speak your truth if you don't know your truth.
Know your truth.
And you are your truth. So it comes back to knowing yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is like the foundation upon which the foundation is built. And so if you're not doing the work to know thyself, then there is really a very little chance that you'll get yourself in a place where you can just speak your truth without having to tend to every fish.
So let's talk about that. What does that mean to know your truth? Because there's a reason why I said that, and of course it's like a 30-second blip and I want to talk like for 40 minutes, but
but it makes you connect your word. I like. Are you going to do that every Tuesday? Because everybody needs to follow us on Instagram. Because that's.
Yeah, it's in our stories. True North Tip Tuesday. Yeah, you or I are going to do it every Tuesday.
True. Oh, I'm doing it too.
Well, why not? If you have a tip,
I just saw it. The point is like, this is a cool thing Abby's going to do.
Just of things that you can, because this is practice. All of this stuff is practice. And so if there's just simple tips and helpful ways to kind of get you through your day to practice aligning with your true north, then let's share that. So that's kind of one way I thought would be helpful, just quick nuggets of information that our tribe can take away.
I like it.
Yeah. But I mean, knowing your truth, so like, what does that mean? Well, really, if I were to ask most people who are not awake what their truth is, they would probably spew at me all their conditioning of their first family, all their beliefs and values from their parents or the people that raised them, their beliefs and values of any religious systems that they've been a part of, like all of these old habits and thought patterns. that we sort of have a tendency to like lean on to show up in the world. And so knowing your truth is taking a really hard look at those and asking yourself, why do I believe that? Do I actually believe that? And just doing some curiosity into kind of the stuff that strikes you and why it strikes you a certain way, either good or bad. There's enough out in the world right now to kind of figure out where you believe and where you stand. But so that's really it. It comes down to literally knowing what your values are. And sometimes the hard truth is they are not what you thought they were, or they are not what your parents are. Like, you've outgrown your parents' values or your religious values or cultural values, anything that maybe no longer serves you, you've outgrown. And so speaking your truth really starts there. It's just figuring out what it is that you believe, what it is that you value, and then beginning to operate from that place, from that knowing, doing things that line with that.
One of the things that I just said not too long ago to somebody else about this was, we were talking about like how can you go your true north if you don't know what direction that is? Mm-hmm. And in trying to engage with that question, I realized that everybody's true north is the same direction. It's inward. Mm-hmm. That's it. That is your true north. And so when you're talking about, why did I just blank?
Knowing yourself, like getting curious about it.
Yes. Okay. So you're talking about that, and you're talking about, like, you ask someone who they are, and they're going to talk about their cultural conditioning, and you're peeling back those layers to figure out what's you and what's not you. Really, at this point, at least where I experience you and me to be in our lives and in our journeys, is it's not so much about figuring out what you are as it is figuring out what you're not. The things you thought you were that you're not. Somebody else's voice, somebody else's input, some other conditioning, something that somebody told you had to be to meet XYZ condition of fulfillment or satisfaction in life or purpose, whatever. Right? So, like, if you get a part of your identity or purpose from your church, ask yourself how you would be different without that church. Mm-hmm. And the things that carry over are really you. The things that don't are the church. Mm-hmm. Same thing with your parents. Same thing with your family of origin. Same thing with your spouse. Same thing with your work, your job, right? Anything that influences you and tells you who to be, go through and be like, okay, well, would I still be this person if I didn't have this voice telling me to be this person? And if you think that you'd be different without that, then fucking be different. Because you're not being who you are if you're listening to that voice. You're just not. So peel back the layers of all the things that you think make up you until there's nothing left informing that but you, who you were before anybody told you who to be. Mm-hmm.
I just realized when you were saying that what that is neuro-linguistic programming. So there is a way, like, I love this, that our brains actually have the ability to adapt and change. Yes. We are able to create new neurons, new patterns, new ways of thinking. And one way to do that, it's one of Byron Katie's methods. She has, her work is actually called The Work. And really that's what it's about, is going through and identifying what your limiting beliefs are, which in essence, that's kind of what you're saying. You're going through and talking about the things that don't serve you, but that you still carry around. And then those limiting beliefs is you start trying on different things. Like, who would I be if I didn't have that thought? Who would I be if I didn't have that person? Who would I be? All of those things. Because then what you're doing, it's kind of then merging Marie Manucherry's idea of the what ifs, where you're basically giving space when you're imagining who you would be without that thought pattern, without those people, those groups, is you're allowing an opportunity for a new neuron to be developed, right? Yeah. Because that lizard brain is not going to be able to come in and shut you down, because it's a what if. It's not a, well, here's evidence, and where it can be shut down. So, yes, to your point, I mean, all that to say, again, long-windedly, is that you really don't have to know what your true north is. That isn't the point. That's not the point, to identify what your true north is. The point is just to keep moving in that direction. And that's how you do that, is just kind of start by rewiring those neurons, by figuring out what it is you believe, what no longer serves you, and then overriding that.
Yeah, until the only voice that tells you who you are is yours.
Is you.
So things come in threes, right? And I experienced a quote. I want to say it's by Greg Braden, but attributions are weird.
Yes,
and
I couldn't
feel like
figure this
Greg
out either.
Braden
I know
says
where you're
a
going.
lot of things that other people have said.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how I
you brought
feel
this
about
up.
Greg Braden, but the quote goes like this: maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so that you can be the you were meant to be in the first place.
Yes.
And that's what I hear you saying. That's when we talk about Byron Katie's work, especially. It's like a more neurological way of just doing that. And again, I've noticed that when people talk about their true north, what I really hear people say most of the time is, what am I supposed to be doing with my life?
Yeah, right.
Did you watch Soul since
Yes!
our last recording?
Yes!
Right? Okay. So, now you know why I keep bringing that up every single time. Like, the whole thing about, okay, we're about to spoil this, so if you haven't seen it, then don't listen to the rest of this.
Stop
But
here.
Find your spark, right? Your spark. And the main character was like conflating spark with purpose. Like, my spark is jazz, so therefore my purpose in this life is to do jazz. And then he does the jazz, and it's so deflating, because then the people who are doing the jazz are like, you just do it again. Like, this is it. There's nothing, and so then, like, he goes to what's his face, one of the spirit beings or whatever, and he's talking about his purpose. He's like, "Hi, you people with your purpose. You think that's what it's about?" Like, it's not about that. It's not about what do I do with my life. It's not about a calling. It's not about like and that was the crazy. So the crazy thing is, my energy healing happened. It came to me when I asked the question, "What am I here to do?" And the reason that I've hit pause on using my healing on other people is because I fell into that trap. I said, okay, here's the thing I can do. When I do this to other people, it affects them in this positive way. Therefore, it came as an answer to the question, what am I here to do? So obviously, I'm supposed to heal people. Nowhere in the whole spirit guide journey did she say anything about other people. I'm just here to heal. And so I was like, well, shit, man. And here's the crazy thing. Sometimes, like, I'll kick up my healing energy, because I'll still get texts from people who are like, my shoulder hurts, and proximity isn't really a thing. So I'll shoot some energy to people and kind of try to make things better. But the last few times I fired it up, my spirit guide would just show up out of nowhere and be like, this is for you. Like, you need this. Don't give it away. And so there's one way you could read that where it's like, this specific wave of healing energy is for me. But another way you could read it where she's like, this whole fucking thing is for you. Your thing to do here is to heal. And here's a tool you can use to heal you. And you even said that the basis for me being able to even be effective at healing people is first to heal myself. 2 specific versions of myself that needed the most badly. Right? And so now I'm thinking, like, the healing thing, the energy healing thing, isn't even related to like what I'm supposed to do here, because I'm kind of detaching from the idea that there's a thing that we're here to do in the first place, other than just be here. Just fucking be. Right? And so then, like, the question, what's my true north, does not even equal anything remotely close to being in the ballpark of what am I supposed to do with my life. I don't care what you do with your life. Just who are you? Who are you going to be? And so then the question is, like, it's not even about what's my true north. It's what's my true self, which are kind of the same thing, because we've said for a while now that, like, when you are being your true self,
my true north?
Anything that you do, who is my true north? Oh,
yeah, that's what we should start saying.
Rob Bell tells a story about some person who was like traveling through mountains and foothills and asking all kinds of gurus, like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And they would all say, oh, I'm not wise enough to answer that question. Go to the next person at this other place. And finally they find the person on the mountaintop. And I'm totally like being dismissive about the story because it doesn't matter. But the punchline is, it goes to the last guru on the top of the mountain and says, who am I? And the guru says, who's asking? That's one of my favorite parables that Rob Bell tells. And that's really what we're getting at. That's what we're getting at. Who are you really? Who are you not? How many layers do you have to shed in order to get back to who you are? And when you're operating in that space, the who that you find will be aligned with love and light and compassion and empathy and unity and healing and wholeness and all that good stuff. And if it doesn't look like that, keep digging because you're not there yet. And when you are operating from that place, then when you speak your truth, you just know that all your fish are going to be healthy.
Your water
Bring
is
it
clean.
all full circle.
That's awesome. I love it. That's a
Welcome
really good
to the
metaphor.
True
It really
Self
is.
Podcast. Well, I thought of it on the
Yes.
spot. I remember sitting there like, okay, I'm going to throw this out there without vetting it first. So this whole entire metaphor could fall apart if it's not, because it was half-baked. But that's what I do. I throw out half-baked stuff and then see what happens. That's
It landed.
my MO. Yeah, it
It was
landed
good.
good.
It was good. Yeah.
What are you grateful for?
Oh, man. Many things. One seemingly random thing, like non-dairy milks. I'm very grateful for non-dairy milk. I am practicing gratitude, okay? I'm really appreciating and valuing, because I want to stay in that frequency. And I realize lately I need to kind of elevate my vibration a little bit. So I was spending a little time just paying attention to the things that bring me joy and that are important to me. And one of them happens to be, I love lattes. I love coffee. And we now live in a world where we have non-dairy milk. So for those that are intolerant to dairy, it's fun to actually have an option where I can still get something that brings comfort and is routine for me. But that's not the only reason. I've been challenged a lot lately. Funny, around this topic of speaking my truth, and the few times that I have lately spoken my truth, it hasn't always been received the best way. And I say that carefully because I still spoke my truth with the intention of not hurting somebody else. And it's really been a struggle because my natural MO is just to sort of throw my hands up in the air and give up. Just be like, all right, you win. You're right. I'm sorry. And move on. Which is sort of an old way of doing things for me that just wants to quickly get things back to status quo, and I'll take all the blame if it just means we'll be okay. So, I just really appreciate the universe throwing me these challenges, because in a way I want it to be a cakewalk to all of a sudden just start speaking my truth and everyone receives it and it's love and light and everybody's happy. And that's not really the reality
Right.
of where people are in their journeys. And so they're gentle enough challenges where I don't completely give up, but it certainly makes me take a hard look at why I said what I said, and then give myself evidence that it was still the right thing to say. And then I know how I showed up, and then try to become the observer and remember that maybe they just had a hysterectomy. What are they throwing on me that I just can't see? And so I am grateful that it's been hard. That's what I'm grateful for. How about you?
When we were like a couple of years out from my dad's death, I was pretty settled into the idea that the things that I loved most about him were the things I was capable of keeping alive in the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I made it a conscious choice to create the reality in which the only thing that died that day was his body. And I think I've been as successful as I can be on that front. I've had a lot of people who didn't know my dad tell me that when I describe my dad, I'm describing myself. Which I take as a compliment, because how can you not? But at the same time, back to what we were saying earlier, like, I'm really describing myself when I describe anybody. You know, that's all we're doing, is we're describing ourselves. But it can also be kind of lonely to decide that I need to both be myself and my dad in my own life. And so one thing I've noticed is that more and more frequently in the last couple of weeks and months, I've noticed that the people I have been intentional about surrounding myself with all have pieces of what I loved about my dad. I mean, you're included in this, but like the people I'm talking about, you guys, I find myself thinking about the people who are the most influential in my life. And when I describe them, I'm describing my dad. And so I just have gratitude for all the things that got me to that spot. Me learning how to take ownership of my own community. It's not a community of convenience by any means. It's not a community of chance. It's a community of, these are the people I want to be in my life. And I will keep them in my life, come hell or high water. And so I'm grateful that I've learned how to do that. And then I'm grateful that I did that. And then I'm grateful that I had the inner compass to know which people to decide were going to be in my life. And that when I take a step back and look, I mean, he's right there. He's just, so I'm not the only person in my life who has to be Rod Bayron to me, because I have people like you, and I have people like, you know, it's all around me now. I'm just so grateful to have the presence of mind to step back and to see that for what it is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what a way to honor him. Wow.
Yeah, that's it's grounding. I think that's like at the very beginning of this. So I was just kind of in a state of flow, just kind of grounded.
Yeah.
And I think, in a very real way, I think that's what it is, because he was many things, but for me, he was grounding. And I think for the first time, I'm aware that I'm consciously stepping into the reality that he's so totally here.
Right.
So, anyway.
That's good food for thought for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to throw that over the fence. And
That's what I love about good friends. It's like you say something like that and I hear how meaningful it is to you, and it honors me that I'm included in that group for you, but then you've also given me something in your sharing of that. So, thank you.
I'll be interested to see where you take that.
Yeah.
Love you, friend.
I love you. Thank you.
Until next time, thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
Bye. We are grateful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what we're doing and you want more, then you can join our tribe to interact with other like-minded individuals. You can go through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/True North Podcast 11.
Is it Podcast 11 or is it True North 11?
Oh, shit.
It's in our show notes. If you want more than that, You want some more hands-on healing stuff that we do. I do actual energy healing and body work, and Abby does life coaching and workshops. And you can find the URLs in our show notes when we figure out what they are.
And we are always trying to increase our reach and bring more people to find their true north. So we would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and rate it in whatever podcast platform you use.
Done. That's perfect. That was
What about
perfect.
the gratitude?
Oh, this one. Hang on. And one last thing. What are you grateful for? There. I said it. I said the thing.